All right, so this is the Resume Elevation Virtual Workshop, selling your value to hiring managers. I also have an interview workshop. I don't have anything scheduled right now because I'm going on vacation next week. But if you guys follow me on Eventbrite or if you follow me on social, specifically LinkedIn, Instagram, I'll try to share out when those sessions are posted. I plan on offering more workshops, but again, you guys are here specifically for the resume, which I really appreciate. This is the beginning of your job search. And yeah, I'm excited that you guys are here. And thank you for making the time. Thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you for looking for help. I think we all know this market is a little, not a little, it is challenging. And I appreciate you guys showing up and understanding that and looking for help showcasing your skills, your value, showing up confidently, all that. So really appreciate you guys making the time today. And I hope you sign up for the squad and we continue to connect. Okay, so why me? Why this workshop? What does my experience have anything to do with any of this stuff? So let's talk about that real quick. My name is Adam Michael Cipoletti. I am a Fortune 500 creative director currently at Salesforce. I run all of their events. You guys are familiar with Salesforce. They do big AI and CRM events like Dreamforce and Trailblazer DX, and they're pretty amazing. Before that, I was at a agency called Outcreate. Before that, I was at Apple for 14 years. So I am coming here with a lot of industry knowledge, but I'm coming here as a ally to the job search because I was stuck in my career. I had worked retail for a long time, and I was probably in retail for 6 years longer than I should have been. And I just didn't understand how to market myself in interviews, in my resume to grow in my career. And it was very frustrating because when I did get the opportunities to do those things, when I did get the opportunity to find an interview, I would get zero feedback or I would get ghosted. And I know that's what everyone is experiencing in this market right now. And then as a hiring manager, I've been hiring almost nonstop at Salesforce. I've hired designers, project managers, art directors, and I just kept seeing the same opportunities from resumes, from interviews over these past almost 3 years that I've been hiring. And I just saw the opportunity to coach people. So I became a career coach. I've been doing that for about 2 years. And I've helped a lot of people elevate their careers. So here's just a few of my amazing one-on-one clients who have elevated their value on their resume in their interviews and have landed some really cool roles. Tosin is currently looking at creative director positions after being in a senior designer role, which is shocking because she has two MBAs from Harvard. And I was like, no. You should not be a senior. You should not be an individual contributor unless she wanted to be. But she really wants to be a leader and she has the background for it. So we really just need to help her tell that story on her resume and in her interviews. Dr. Heather is an amazing client who had her own business for 20 years. So she wanted to, post pandemic, she wanted to get back into academia and she didn't have a story to tell because she hadn't had to have a resume in 20 years. She hasn't had to interview in 20 years. So we really sat down and went through her resume, her academic CV, and we elevated her story. And she's been interviewing at universities in upstate New York. And Samjita, another amazing client who was a senior designer, but really had the skills for an art director. And we elevated her resume and she landed a role at Salesforce. So a lot of very cool success. So what are we going to learn today that's going to help elevate our careers? Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about what a resume is and why it's important. I want to talk about the job market. So I call that the age of operating margin. We'll discuss that a little more. I'm going to talk about crafting a strong professional summary, leveraging testimonials, One thing I don't speak about in this workshop is the skills section on your resume. So if that's something that you feel like there's an opportunity, so a lot of people put too many skills in their skills section, for example. That's part of my resume guide, which again, you guys can get for free. Usually I sell for $50, but if you sign up for the standout squad, there's a coupon available. Then we'll talk about your actual job bullets, which is your job experience. We'll talk a little bit about AI, and then we can recap. And if you guys have questions, I will try to stay on for that as well. Okay. So what is a resume and why is it important? So let's start with what is a resume? So the dictionary definition is a brief account of a person's education, qualifications, and previous experience, typically sent with a job application. So this makes me cringe because I think it's really inaccurate. If you guys are here in the States with me in Canada, we don't really put the education at the top of the resume anymore. So for it to start this statement is inaccurate. If you guys are in Europe or in the UK, that is still a good way to start your CV. That's more of a traditional way to do it. But here in the States, your education is just not as important as you would think. So it should go at the bottom, and we'll talk about that a little more. But this really doesn't get to the crux of what you're trying to do here. So your resume is a concise and compelling sales and marketing document. Sorry, just muting somebody, guys. Sales and marketing tool targeted at recruiters and hiring managers. And I want you guys to think about recruiters and hiring managers, because what you're trying to do is make their life easy. We'll talk about that a little more, but if I had an open role currently, I would be looking at 100 resumes a day. So we're going to talk about how to make you stand out among those 100 resumes daily, but also how to make it easier on the hiring manager and the recruiter to really understand who you are, what value you're bringing. It's a brief account of your professional experience. You're going to highlight your qualifications through growth, behavior, and results. Growth, behavior, and results. Okay, so how is this your marketing tool? We talked about your target audience. You're gonna think about recruiters and hiring managers. You're gonna craft a clear value proposition at the top of your resume. That's your professional summary. You're going to need to have compelling content, skills, and results. And we're going to talk about that when we talk about your job experience. It needs to be structured to tell a story. So we're going to talk about the order of the sections in your resume. And it needs to build trust with social proof, which are those testimonials, which we'll discuss as well. So why is your resume important? Well, it's obviously your first impression. This is your first opportunity to shine in front of the recruiter and the hiring manager. So you need to be able to share your story and quick. And I am going to make a caveat on that. The one-page resume is a myth. If you were early in your career, I would say entry to 3 or 5 years, it's pretty standard to have a one-page resume. That's fine. If you bleed into 2 pages, that's great too. But if you have 5, 10, 20 years experience, you can make your resume longer. And the way that I'm going to explain how to do your job bullets, your resume is probably going to get longer anyway. What I would stress is that try not to make it over 3 pages. That is too much, even for someone with 20 years experience. Again, when you think about a hiring manager and a recruiter, if we're going through all these resumes, we do need them to be somewhat concise because we just don't have the time to go through them. But 1 page is it's not enough for a lot of people to tell their story. So don't be fearful if you go over 1 page, especially if, again, 5, 10, 20 years worth of experience. So this is the opportunity to differentiate yourself, and I cannot stress that enough. Like, if you're not rating yourself at a 5, I'd ask the group at the beginning if from 1 to 5 how they feel about their resume. If you're not feeling like a 5, the hiring manager and the recruiter aren't going to feel like a 5, because they need to know why you are different from the other resumes they're seeing. And I can't stress enough how cookie cutter some of the resumes that I get as a hiring manager are. I'm going to help break you guys out of that. And it's the new cover letter. And what I mean by that is a lot of roles don't require cover letters anymore, but this is still an opportunity to get your wins, your big wins in front of a recruiter and hiring manager before an interview. And I think that's the biggest struggle right now is the people who are getting interviews are sharing stories, meaningful stories on their resume before they get to even talk to the recruiter and hiring manager. And that is different. You would usually use your cover letter for that. I would say 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that would be the focus is, or five to 10 years ago. That would be your focus is you write this beautiful cover letter with this amazing story and these this one or two amazing wins, and that sets you up to differentiate yourself, but you just don't have that opportunity anymore. So we have to kind of switch it up and put those wins in our resume. Okay, let's take a step back though. Let's talk about this job market because I know that you guys feel like this young woman here in this picture because that's how I felt when I was stuck in my career too. So, what is happening in the job market right now? Well, if you these are numbers from May, but you could see a lot of companies are laying off, and you guys might have been part of a layoff or a restructuring. Um, and this is really hard for a lot of people because, first off, your worth is, you feel like your worth is tied to your job. And if anyone feels that way here, I have a mini course called Shifting Your Mindset for Job Search Success on the Standout Squad. It's 30 minutes, it's a bunch of videos and some worksheets, but it's about building resilience and kind of separating your worth from your career and setting you up for to be more resilient when it comes to this job market. So how you take on rejection, how you take on ghosting, how you um, focus on your values and kind of set boundaries for yourself so you're not suffering with anxiety or stress. Um, and yeah, and sleepless nights. I get that. So what is happening in this post-pandemic job market is if we go back to the pandemic, a lot of or most companies were saying, "Oh my God, look at all this amazing remote talent we can get, and more affordably too. Look at all this amazing talent we can get affordably if we start hiring remotely." Um, so they grew they just grew all their employees, and then 2022 comes around and analysts and investors go to these companies and say, we don't care about growth anymore. What we care about is something called operating margin. If you guys are familiar with that term, it really just means how efficient a company is. So it's their profit and their revenue versus how many employees they have. So basically they're saying, we want to see you do more with less. And that's what is happening now. All these companies are restructuring. They're looking for what they call redundancies. Um, so you'll see Microsoft, Facebook, all these companies almost twice a year, if not three times a year. I know Microsoft is rumored to have another big layoff. This was in May, and they're rumored to have another big layoff in July. They're looking across the board at just titles, and they're saying like, okay, if I have two senior designers on this team, can one senior designer do that role? And then they compare the two based off their salary and performance. And they say, okay, well, if they're equal performance and someone makes more money, then they're gonna get cut. So that is just the market that we're in right now. And that's why the market feels it is oversaturated. I think a lot of people have been laid off. Everyone is looking for roles. You could see all these companies is from the beginning of the year. I haven't even updated this with June, and I can't even imagine what's going to happen next month. And it's not to say the jobs aren't out there. The reason that I'm bringing this up is that, so what does this mean for you? Is that you just have to think about how you're showing up differently on your resume and in interviews, but we're going to focus on the resume today. So more than ever, hiring managers and recruiters are looking for efficiency in your resume. So how you've shown up and you've done operations or you've impacted operations in your role. Now, the challenge with this for many of you is that you might not have, or you should have experience with operations, but that was never the focus of your role. The focus of your role as an individual contributor per se, if you guys have just been individual contributors, is that you were focused specifically on your job tasks, which is fine. Like if you were a graphic entry level graphic designer or junior graphic designer, you should be focused on designing your work, learning new tools, learning design trends, for example. And then when you would start to get into like senior roles, but really leadership roles like managers and directors, then you start to think about operations. So that's like the efficiency of the team, the efficiency of project timelines, the efficiency around budget. But now that's kind of had to happen, or you have to start thinking about that stuff in these earlier roles. So this is different. And it's just hasn't been a focus for you otherwise. So again, this is different. So what you're going to want to do is think about, if you are one of those early career professionals who just hasn't had to focus on operations, you want to think about a time where you've saved time, you've saved money, you've made an impact that's made more money. And those are the types of wins that you want to show up on your resume. And if you are a manager or a director level candidate, you need to make sure that operations is showing up and it's showing up clearly. So if not, most of the bullets in a job description or in your job experience, it should be at least 2 strong bullets, and operations should show up in your summary, your professional summary as well. So I'll give you guys some examples of that as we go through those sections, but I want to be very clear. This is what's going to differentiate you in this market, is being able to think of operations. And just to break that down, what are operations? Systems, processes, and strategies. So if you've had any experience building a system or a process that has improved your job or the business or your team. So an example I like to use is onboarding. So if you've ever trained someone to join your team, were there any processes that you felt were inefficient? Did you put together, it could be as simple as saying, I gathered all the different systems and processes and communications we use, and I created a document that saved 24 hours worth of time for onboarding. So that's a story you can tell where you did an efficiency win. Before I move on, does this make sense? Can I get some either thumbs ups, thumbs downs? Yeah, we'll talk about that, Stephen. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about percentages, how you showcase results themselves. I just wanted to make sure that this foundational piece is understood, that operations is necessary. Okay. So let's talk about different sections of your resume. Let's start with crafting a strong professional summary. So at the top of your resume, you're going to have your name. You're going to have your contact information. You should have a headline of some sort. So you could say something like, for me, it would be creative director, brand strategist, storyteller. So you should have some sort of headline describing yourself, and it should lead with the role that you're looking for, or very, very close to that. And then maybe some sub roles that you're comfortable with. And then you're going to have a professional summary. So 10 years ago, 15 years ago, this would have been the objective. I should not see an objective on your resume. Your objective should be to get the job and make money. That's what I think as a hiring manager. That's not helpful to me if I see an objective like to become a graphic designer at your company. Like, no, that's not helpful. I want to know what you are bringing to this role, and really what it should be. The professional summary is really a summary of the resume itself. It should be giving me an idea of how long you've been in a role. So I say describe yourself as a creative professional, but I'll give you guys an example of that. You want to describe yourself as a team collaborator. you want to describe yourself in that industry, or the impact that you have in that industry, or what you're passionate about in that industry. But it needs to basically sum up what I'm about to read. That's how you make it easier for the recruiter and the hiring manager, is with this professional summary that basically says, hey, I've been doing this for so long. This is what I'm passionate about. This is what I'm known for. Yeah, so let me give you guys an example. So here's like a 5-year graphic designer. Maybe they worked at an agency. So they describe themselves as an innovative graphic designer. And I don't talk about values in this workshop, but if I could stress anything other than the operations piece, you guys should be very, very clear in your values, what your top 5 values are. That's going to prep you for not only some of this resume. So this candidate leads with innovative. That's a value. You could say another value could be like, for me, compassionate leader. So I would say it's like compassionate creative director, focus on building teams, something like that. That's another value. So something that you're motivated by. So those are your values. And if you guys need have never done a value sort or need to do one, that's part of that shifting mindset course. But anyway, so we lead with a value. We describe who we are. So we're an innovative graphic designer. We talk about the amount of experience that we have. This is the summary. I'm not. I don't want to do that math. I don't, as a hiring manager, I don't want to have to look at the years that you've been in these roles and be like, oh, okay, they've been here and been for like 15 years, because then I have to scroll down the whole resume and do the math myself. No, make it easy for me. Then we're highlighting some wins here. So these are just top brands. Again, I don't expect you guys to have these types of results or experiences, but you could say working at local restaurants in my area, and highlight some of the top ones, or ones that are rated well. Like, just make it tangible by giving uh, uh, more information about the experience you have in that role. And then you could highlight some skills here. So if you want to like look at the keywords in the job description, or the key skills that you want to highlight. So they're saying in this, highly knowledgeable about content creation with the Adobe Creative Suite, for example. And then this is that I would have either said something like, and this is my example, but you could either said something like working on teams as large as 10, 6, 10, 20, whatever the case may be. But I wanted to share instead experience in collaborating with SVP stakeholders to produce award-winning design. So you don't work in a vacuum. So if you can share how you work with other people in the summary, whether it's you coach them, you lead them, you work on a specific team size, you work with global teams, you work with cross-functional teams, the types of stakeholders you work with. So this is, again, 3 to 5 sentences. I would probably keep it to around 3 or 4. That gives the idea of how long you've been in the industry, what you're skilled or very passionate about, and how you work with people. Does that help? This is like your elevator pitch. That's how I want you guys to think about this. If you were stuck in an elevator with a hiring manager and only had 10 floors to give your pitch, and this elevator is like starts going up, how would you describe yourself? So let's talk about what comes after your professional summary, and that's testimonials. Does anyone in this group have a testimonial on their resume? Put it in the chat, come off of mic. I just want to know yeah, okay. No. Yeah, I'm gonna say 99% of resumes that I look at don't have a testimonial. Why does it matter to have a testimonial? Let's take a step outside of the job search for a second. I'm about to have a baby, actually, in less than a month. And I have to buy stroller, crib, high chair, all this stuff. So I have a child in 6 years. So my first son is 6 years old. So while I was experienced, things have changed. So the way that I have to get through this madness of buying things is I have to look at reviews. I have to look at Amazon reviews. I have to look at Walmart reviews. I have to look at TikTok reviews. I have to look at YouTube reviews. That is social proof. That I have to make sure that not only the company is saying what their product is capable of, but I look at other people's input. The average person, you would hope that the influencer you're looking at is not a paid reviewer. But I'm looking at these other people because I need social proof to understand if this product is right for me. This is a marketing tactic and it works. So what think about how your resume is currently laid out. You have your contact information, your headline, a professional summary. That is you talking about you. So it really just is summing up the resume, but to make it more impactful, what if you had a piece right below it, again, 3 to 5 sentences that basically backed up your professional summary from another person? That's why a testimonial works. And it can't hurt you. And I can only say that because I got a job at Salesforce with having a testimonial on my resume. So this could be a former colleague, former manager, um, professor, teacher. If you're like entry level, it just from a psychological perspective, we all look at reviews to make big decisions. That's how this works for recruiters and hiring managers as well. So if you guys need to get a testimonial, which most of you do, instead of just going to request one, I like to make it easier on the people that I'm hoping to get a testimonial from by just having them answer these questions.
All right.
And this is an opportunity where you can use ChatGPT
right there
to summarize these questions and answers into a solid testimonial. And we'll talk a little more about AI. But when you use something like ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude, when you use a prompt like this, you could say something like, using these questions and answers, create a 3 to 5 sentence testimonial for my resume. Give me what I would highlight is say, give me 3 options. That way you guys can pick and choose what you like from those options. And then I would send all 3 back. I would send one that you've rewritten to the person that's answered these questions and say, hey, what do you like about these options? Here's what I thought worked best and reflects my professional summary. And as long as you get a sign off from them, then you can use that testimonial. So you guys can take a screenshot of this. You guys download the free guide. These questions are also available, but just make it easy for these people. That way you get the testimonial, you get it back quick. And again, you put it right under your professional summary. And again, because no one does this, as you guys see in the chat, no, you are going to stand out. This is another way to differentiate yourself from other candidates. Okay, so I'm going to skip the skills section. Again, that's part of the guide. What I will quickly say about skills is that you shouldn't have more than 12 skills listed in your areas of expertise or your top skills section. And it should be a mix of soft skills and hard/technical skills. So if you have more than 12, you're overselling yourself and you're going to come across as fake, basically. But I described the philosophy behind that or the psychology behind that in the resume guide. So let's jump into your actual job experience. So we want to showcase growth and results. And I know, Stephen, you had mentioned percentages before. So we're going to talk about that. So first off, don't just list responsibilities. That is not helpful. That does not differentiate you. If I'm thinking about the people that I'm hiring and I see an art director, someone's applying for an art director role and I see that they've been an art director before and they list managing designers and projects, managing budget. Matt, that's not helpful to me because every art director does that, or I'm going to assume that as an art director, you should be doing that. So that's a waste of my time if you're just listing responsibilities. So what I like to say is put the title for the job, the dates that you were there, and then put a one sentence about your top priority or your top responsibilities in that role. So a description of that would be, for me as a creative director, I could say, uh, as the creative director for keynotes, I lead all major events, all major presentations at Salesforce, leading a team of 5 in collaboration with 20 other copywriters or messengers, whatever the case may be. So something like that would be like the generic responsibilities at the top, but then the rest of the bullets in your job need to be basically stories that showcase results with quantitative data and context. I'm going to highlight and context because context for these results is what's going to differentiate you. Originally, it was going to be the percentages, like you mentioned, Stephen. Like that was the big shift, is that people would start sharing percentages on their resume. That's not enough. We need to see, as recruiters and hiring managers, we need to understand how you got to those percentages. So we're going to talk about that. So this is the type of things you would see on a resume. A generic or a not optimized or elevated resume. So for example, this would be for my role as a Salesforce creative director, I would say directed high profile creative projects, including keynotes and executive presentations for global events. This is true. It just doesn't differentiate me from any other creative director who does the same thing for Apple or Facebook or Meta or Google. Increased presentation viewership by 10%. That's impressive. That's an amazing number. But it doesn't give enough context. Like, how did I do that? Developed presentation materials and templates to help employees create consistent professional decks. Again, not enough differentiation from other creative directors who focus on presentations across the industry. Same thing with this last one. Provided basic training resources to improve presentation skills and ensure alignment with company standards. So these are just not impactful enough. They're literally just a list of things that any creative director has done, again, if they've worked on presentations. So let's use the first one as an example. So how can we change this one to be turned into a story that's more impactful? So instead of saying directed high profile creative projects, including keynotes and executive presentations for global events, I could say focus on one key win, because the assumption is if I've done it once and I have this amazing result that I can repeat that. And so here I say successfully delegated and designed the main keynote presentation for Dreamforce 2022. I produced an ultra widescreen presentation that involved the brand to introduce innovative AI solutions by working across multiple global teams and agencies. This is the context that you need. Again, you're showcasing soft skills and collaboration, how you work with people. So by working across multiple global teams and agencies to bring a cohesive feel to the entire tech deck that has been viewed on YouTube over 2.7 million times. So this one I didn't have a percentage, but that number speaks for itself. And I don't think you guys need these huge numbers. Just any improvement, any number to help the hiring manager understand how you work. Another example I like to use. Actually, we'll look at it. We'll look at it. But if let's say you don't have a number like 2.7 million, have you ever worked in a tight timeline? Like within 24 hours, within 48 hours, within whatever. That's a huge piece of quantitative data that you can share to showcase that you work quickly, you work efficiently. So you want to be able to share those types. If you guys have been in retail, you could share numbers like improve my sales, improve my customer net promoter score or my customer feedback survey over a quarter by 10 points, 10%, whatever the case may be. It doesn't really matter how large the number is as long as you're showcasing some sort of improvement or impact. So think about numbers that you can share that show impact in your role. Now, you might not have these stories ready to go in the guide, the resume guide. There's something like 30 prompts, which are really interview questions that help you think of the stories that you would want to tell, and those are also stories that you can tell, highlight on your resume. So I recommend downloading that guide, going through those, and saying, "Hey, can I answer any of these?" And those should be wins that you share on your resume. I'll share the link now, but I'm gonna share it at the end too. And I'll also send out a follow-up email when I upload this, when I upload the replay. So that's how you sign up for the squad if you want to get the coupon code. Right now, it's currently in the Facebook group, but if you guys don't have Facebook, I'm adding it to the Standout Squad membership. I don't have a sample CV, but Fahad, I have a free ATS resume template on my site. If you just go to the main page and go under resources, and that gives you the framework. It basically says like put your professional summary here, and this is what it should include. So that's another resource for you guys. If you just go, if you go here. But maybe I should share my personal resume on the Standout Squad so that you guys can see how I do it. So I'll think about that. Thanks for that prompt. So how do you write? Let's get back to the bullets. How do you write bullets like this? I think that's really what's important. Have you guys ever heard of the STAR method? Just thumbs up is fine in the chat. And if you haven't, we're gonna go over it. So okay. So the STAR method is traditionally a framework for answering interview questions. It is a storytelling framework. It is start with the situation, discuss the task that you were given, uh, talk about the action that you took, share the results of that, of what you did. So this is great when answering an interview question because it keeps you on task because you really are saying like 4 to 5 sentences and then you stop and you wait for questions. A lot of people will start to ramble, or a lot of people will answer with hypotheticals when these types of questions that need to be answered need to be answered with a specific example. Well, this is the same type of framework that you use to create those bullets. So I'm going to give you guys an example here. So here is the situation. So this is how I would answer an interview question, but I want you guys to get comfortable with this framework for that reason, because you're practicing for interviews. But then you could also put these on your resume as bullets. So if again, this would be something like, tell me about a time. The question would be something like, tell me about a time you worked in a high-paced and high or a fast-paced environment. How did that situation go? If you could have changed it, what would you have changed? Something like that. A hiring manager or a recruiter would ask, or a team interviewer would ask. So I would say, okay, the situation was I was at McCann Health hosting an employee town hall. Or no, sorry. McCann Health was hosting an employee town hall for their New York office in 2 days and didn't have a presentation deck for their speakers. The task that I was given as a freelance presentation designer, I was tasked with gathering all content and assets, then building a deck using PowerPoint. The action that I took, this could be one or two actions. I worked with the senior project manager and SVPs to gather messaging content and develop the story for the deck. I then went to the McCann Health website to understand their current brand and applied the same look to create a template that aligned with their brand. I partnered with internal and external partners to gather all necessary assets, speaker photos, icons, and more. And then the result was the SVPs were amazed. I could quickly turn around a 30 slide deck aligned to their brand look. They presented in front of 600 employees, successfully communicating new policies and procedures and celebrating employee promotions. They were so happy with the results, they kept me on as a freelance employee to work on new business pitch decks for the next 12 months. Okay, really great, strong story. Now I could throw this into ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, and I could say, hey, take this STAR method story and give me 3 options for a job bullet for my resume. And it should give you something like this. In less than 48 hours, I designed a 30-slide PowerPoint deck for the McCann Health Employee Town Hall. Collaborating with multiple executives, I developed the story, designed the deck to their brand standards, and delivered a show for 600 employees. The SVP was so impressed that they extended my 1-week contract to 12 months. Now, this is awesome. It's still large. It's a big bullet. So how do we manage big bullets on our resume? Well, most of your roles shouldn't have more than 3 to 4 bullets. If you have a lot of wins in your latest role, yeah, put 5 bullets there. But most of your experience, even entry level, can have 2 bullets, like your earlier experience. So that's the other thing. Like if your resume has like 20 bullets, like, yeah, I mean, even more than 5 to 10, that's a lot. That's a lot to showcase or explain. Like it shouldn't be that much. Because again, you'll put that generic kind of what I do in my role sentence at the top, and then you'll follow that by 3 to 4 key wins where you made impact. You guys could see how I shared quantitative data here. So the quantitative data is I did this in 48 hours. It was a 30-slide deck. It was for 600 employees. And again, you don't need this much quantitative data, but this is an example of how you can showcase data in your resume. And I extended my 1-week contract to 12 months. And this could have been a percentage too. I extended my 1-week contract to, I don't know what the percentage of that would be, but a lot. 4 times 12. I mean, I don't want to do that there, but the 52, yeah, I don't know, like over, yeah, too much, 520,000% or something. But you guys can do that too. You can get a percentage for how you improve something, that's helpful as well. As Stephen had mentioned, percentages are helpful. But these are other forms of quantitative data that you can share. Timelines, project size, team size. Yep. So those are the types of bullets that I'd like to see. I know we're running over, so just very quickly, positive negatives of generative AI. I think it's okay to use AI, as you've heard me mention. I've given you some prompts. Actually, that guide has prompts in there too. Just make sure you're asking for options and you're not copying and pasting directly from ChatGPT, Gemini, or Claude, because AI can still hallucinate. So it can make up stuff just based off, because it may just not have the data that it needs. So it can hallucinate. So you always want to rewrite what it gives you. It also uses like a lot of weird formatting issues, like M dash, like formatting things like M dashes and other things. So it's still good to rewrite. And when you ask for multiple options, you could take pieces from each that help really tell it in your own voice. So that's what I recommend. Use AI. Don't copy it verbatim. Ask for options. So when I'm planning my baby shower right now, and every time I ask it for some sort of, we're doing a festival theme called Baby Palooza because it's in Chicago, and every time I ask it for something, like give me the name, what should I call the festival, or what should I call the diaper raffle? Give me 10 options, and I always make sure that it gives me options. That way, I can put it in my own words and cut and paste parts. So use AI, just be careful, be aware. Okay, so Q&A. Anyone wants to come off mic? Anyone have questions about what we went over today? You guys can ask questions about stuff that we didn't get to go over today.
Hey, sir, thank you for your time. This is for Q&A, isn't it?
Yeah,
Okay.
do you have any questions, Oliver?
I do. So more of a general, could you talk about ATS and the importance of it for recruiters in more detail?
Yeah. So I have a section of the guide at the end that talks about formatting your resume. So ATS is really just applicant tracking system. That's what it stands for. And systems like Workday are those types of things. So whenever you have to apply for a role, sometimes you have to create a new login for Workday or however you update it or upload it. And you'll send your resume, and then these ATS systems will verify the information that the information makes sense. So like the order of the information, it will look for keywords. And what I would say is make it a Word document if you can. That or a PDF should be the formats that you upload your resume in. Don't use weird formatting like columns. Like ATS doesn't like columns for some reason, or these systems don't like columns. So if you guys are creatives, if you guys are designers, I have a whole section in my resume guide about not designing your resume. It's just not worth it because these systems will flag when columns are broken, they don't make sense, or it's reading content from one column into another column because they look at content from left to right. So the columns, the information might bleed into to one another, and that breaks it. Um, Also, they're looking for keywords, so I like to use um my the keywords from the job description. So I'll use the skills section to kind of pepper in some of those, as well as like the professional summary. But keep it very, very clean. Don't use like crazy fonts. Don't do columns. And yeah, because the more you customize your resume to look special, the more likely it is to get rejected by ATS or even AI if they're using AI within their ATS now. So those are my biggest concerns. Does that help answer the question, Oliver?
That does, sir. I really do appreciate your information. I didn't
Yeah.
really know much about the STAR method or how to formulate responses to recruiters in interviews, and I'm glad you covered that actually. Would you like to, is there anything more you'd like to add to the STAR method?
Well, that I have an interview workshop for. I'm just not doing one today. Usually I do these back to back, and there's like an interview session right after this. But unfortunately, I'm going on vacation tomorrow, so I didn't have time to do that, and I don't have anything scheduled. So what I would say, Oliver, is if you follow me on Eventbrite, you should see when I have new workshops available. You could also just check if you go to my website and under services, it will list the two workshops, the resume workshop and the interview workshop, and that will also tell you times. There's nothing scheduled right now because I'm about to go on vacation. But just pay attention because I don't have anything next week. I'll probably have stuff the following week. So if you want to join that interview, we dive a little deeper into those answers. Um, and when to use them, because I think that's important as well. We talk about everything from tell me about yourself, why do you want to work here, um, greatest strength, greatest weakness, and then when to use the STAR method with situational questions. Um, this is a question from iPhone. So what are the best platforms for job searches in Canada? I'm not familiar enough with the Canadian market, honestly, but what I would say is just don't stick to one job search site. So I would just look around for if here in the States, I would say not only LinkedIn and Indeed, which are going to be the top one, but check out Monster. Monster is still good. Um, Check Google. Google has their own Google Jobs. If you guys are looking for jobs that are 100,000 or more, I think there's a site called Ladders. It is a paid site. I think you do have to pay for it though. There's like a subscription. Um, but that's another. They can like that. I think that website also auto applies for you based off of the resume and your questionnaire. So I would look at those types of sites. I'm not familiar with Canadian market as much as that. Just that I know that the resume format is the same. Um, what other questions do you guys have? I have about 3 to 5 more minutes. These were great questions.
Would you have any warnings for, like any kind of website that you go to, any warnings for applying for jobs?
You have warnings, but like this is the other thing. There are this is the scary thing about this market though. There are scams out there. So like if anyone reaches out to you, I would be very, very wary of it. Just be wary of it. Don't like there'll be scams where they'll be like, oh, we'll ship you equipment for the interview, but we can't. So if you like give us your bank account information, like crazy stuff like that. So just like it's just not just let them know, like if someone reaches out to you, it's like, okay, can you provide me with the link to the job description? Then just verify that that URL is a safe URL before you go and verify that's really on their site. But even these fake recruiters are creating profiles on LinkedIn, so it's making it difficult to understand who is who. Um, that's one reason I created the Standout Squad. It's a very small community right now, but the goal is to get people from sitting in the echo chamber of LinkedIn, which I think is very challenging because a lot of it is I haven't had a job in 6 months. I haven't had a job in 18 months. Why aren't recruiters and hiring managers taking a chance on me? And then it's hiring managers and recruiters saying like, um look at this risk that I took on someone, but like this echo chamber isn't realistic. It's not how you showcase your value in the right, like it's not helping you tell your story, it's not helping you showcase your value. So I wanted to create a safe space where we can help elevate one another um outside of that crazy kind of echo chamber.
Yeah, I have
I
another question if you've got the.
Yeah, let me just answer Fahad's question. For graduate roles with the CV should be one page. It really depends on your job experience, Fahad, because if you have job experience that you think is applicable to the role prior to you going to school, and I would just be realistic about that. Like if you need those three bullets, to tell that story in those previous job roles or that internship role, then just do what feels right for you. Like if you have the wins to share, then and you bleed over into 2 pages, then you bleed over into 2 pages. You're just showcasing your value. But if you don't have a lot of experience, I wouldn't fluff it up to exceed 2 pages. Does that make sense? Yeah, and what I've read for Hot, because I was actually in London 2 weeks ago, I was doing some research and they it's one of you can put a testimonial on your resume there as well. I that is a marketing tactic that people are using in the UK too. So if you can find the testimonial, I would use that to make yourself stand out. And Oliver, you had another question. Sorry about that. Okay, you
Yeah,
got it.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's essentially it. But yeah, how would you, with this star method, you're essentially going to be telling the interviewers, stories about what you did for a company, which uh, relationships can wear down and you might not be on the best standing. How would you prevent yourself from like casting shade or putting someone in a bad light in your previous experience?
So just you cannot be negative. That's the thing. Don't be negative in any of your answers. So when you're forming these star method stories, even if they did have negative implications, um, this is another course that I teach, something called fearless feedback and trust. But um, even if there was negative impact, the behaviors itself that you discuss of other people should always be considered neutral, that they never were, you would assume people were never out to get you, but that the behavior had a negative impact. And I would say that. I would say like, say there was a situation and we would go over this. This is one of the examples we use in the interview workshop. But like say you had a question like, tell me about a time you dealt with a difficult team member and it impacted and it risked a project timeline or risked the project results or something like that. The answer should be something like, um, this was the project that we were on. It was me and this other colleague, so that was the situation. But let me tell you a real story so that it makes more sense. Um, or it sounds like a real answer. So I was at Salesforce and we were working on a project for our CEO Mark Benioff. It was myself and the art director Aaron, or let's use a different. Yeah, Aaron's fine. Aaron. Um, the task that we were given was to work together to deliver a internal presentation to him within a week. The actions that we took were we split up slide responsibilities. I designed the upfront, he designed the end slides. Um, and unfortunately he wasn't delivering his slides on time, and it was going to risk the timeline. And this is something that as a team we take a lot of pride in, is making sure that we deliver on time, especially because this is Mark, the CEO who owns the company. um, we never know what time zone he's in. It's like really important for him to get stuff so that he can review it, because he might not have time to rehearse it. So what I did was and again, this is like a big chunk, is the actions that you took. So the action I took was I uh partnered with Aaron to understand like where he was, like asking him where he was coming from, like was he okay? Like how could I help him? Should we bring someone else onto the project? And he understood that he identified that he wasn't delivering everything on time. He asked for support. We were able to get in another designer. We were able to deliver on time. So like as much as I want to like blame it on Aaron in that story, Oliver, I need to be um positive about like assuming positive intent. And again, you might not have this experience to speak exactly to. So what you could say is like, if you do have a bad experience, you could say, unfortunately, like during that time, it didn't go over the way that I wanted to, and I had to approach their manager, and their manager had to get involved. But if I had the opportunity, I would have approached them myself and asked them, hey, how are you? Is there any way I could help you? Stay positive. Just stay positive. Does that make sense?
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the answer. I don't
Yeah.
have any other further questions.
Because those, a lot of those interview questions, Oliver, are gonna have negative connotations because they want to understand how you overcome those challenges and how you work with difficult people. That's the reality of it. Because not everyone's gonna get along. So those, a lot of questions you'll get in interviews are around working with difficult stakeholders, working with challenging partners, that kind of stuff. Great, I mean, great questions. Thank you again, guys. I can hang out for another few minutes. Any other questions? I shared, let me share the standout squad, and I can show you guys a little bit of the guide if you guys want to hang out. I'll show you exactly what. Let me just share this link again. Squad. And if you guys have Facebook, you can join the Facebook group. We can have conversations there. You guys can provide your resumes there. Well, that's true, Stephen. Yeah, it does depend on the industry. I know a lot. I would think about ways of adding soft skills in there though, because I think what the challenges are with those types of questions is that you want it to be about you. Because they may say, like, tell me about the last project you worked on, and you'll dive into like the project and how you programmed around it. Um, look for opportunities though to say, I'm on a team, these were my stakeholders, this is how I got feedback, this is how I implemented feedback, this is how the project was reviewed, that kind of thing. Okay, good. Yeah, yeah. Just make sure that people are part of that answer. That's the thing that I want to highlight, Oliver, is that there is no taking risks right now for hiring managers and recruiters. So I want us to be empathetic about the job market. Like, yes, they are the key holders, but their jobs are at risk. So they're not able to take on just anyone, because what they're fearful about is that if they hire someone that isn't 110% they're confident about, let's say they hire them for their personality, for example, they don't want 6 months down the road that candidate to be a redundancy in one of these restructurings, because then it falls back on them. Like, we spent all this money hiring someone, now they're a redundancy because they're not performing the way that they should, or they're not efficient enough, or whatever the case may be. So now this recruiter's job is at risk for bringing someone in that may not have been as impactful. So I want to just, it's hard out there. And what I need you guys to do as candidates is really show up more. Yeah, recruit. Yeah, it really is a time thing. Even as a hiring manager, I was able to make time to talk to candidates, but hiring takes forever. It's just such a long process, Stephen. Like there's so much stuff going on in the background too that you guys might not be privy to, like budgets suddenly changing, requirements for the role changing. Someone else suddenly left the company, so now that role to fill is more of a priority. So it's like there's so much happening in the background. I wish it could just be as easy as you put the job description out, you find a candidate, you interview two or three people and they're hired, but no, it is such a long process. I probably hired 6 or 7 people almost nonstop back to back at Salesforce, and it took me 2.5 years because it is such on top of me doing my job, but it's such a long process. Um, let me yeah, Oliver. So something that I learned at Apple is that you should keep an exchange journal at your job that you have with your leader, or I mean you can keep it for yourself, but you use this journal to like look at the quarter and you just write a star method story about a win. That way you just have it. Like that way you don't have to think about it for try to bring it up later when you're desperate to find a job. You know what I mean? So if you could keep a bank of those stories, yeah, awesome. Good job, Steven. Yeah, that's great. Awesome, everybody. Thank you so much. I hope you join the standout squad. Feel free to share your resumes there if you want some quick feedback. Um, again, that has a Facebook group as well as a membership site on my site, and I'm gonna upload the recap and I'll put the coupon code on the site as well. They currently aren't there, they're on the Facebook group, but I'm gonna add a page